Hello and welcome to Insights in Business, a joint production of Campbell River Chamber of Commerce and Shaw TV. My name is Mike Boulet. I'm the past board chair and your host for today, when our topic will be forest industry. In a recent chamber survey, the forest industry was recognized as one of the top 3 economic drivers in our region. Joining me today from the Shaw TV studios in Campbell River, we have Chris Harrott with ASAP Geomatics.
That's it.
Domenico Yanni DiNardo with Timber West, and Corby Lamb from Capacity Forest Management, who is also our current board chair. Gentlemen, I'm just going to go around here and get you to introduce yourselves and your company just a little bit. Chris, can we start with you?
Yeah, I'm with ASAP Geomatics. We're based here in Campbell River, actually up at the airport. And we've developed a product for aerial surveillance, aerial imagery to help grow the forest industry and become more environmental monitoring, as well as tree counts, and developed our own proprietary software here in Campbell River to help grow that business.
Excellent. Domenico.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. Yeah, Domenico Yanni DiNardo with Timber West. I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Chief Forester. Timber West has been around 105 years on Vancouver Island. We're a tree growing company. We employ upwards of about 450 to 500 people out of the Campbell River region. We grow about 4 truckloads of logs an hour, if you put it that way. And very happy to be here to talk about all things forestry, and in particular some of the things we've been doing with local Campbell River businesses to bring innovation into the industry.
That's terrific. Thanks for being here. Corby.
Thanks, Mike. Corby Lamb. I'm the president and partner in Capacity Forest Management. We're a forest management company, full scope, that does forestry management, economic development, and currently got into treaty negotiations for First Nations in Campbell River. So we've got about 30 employees. We're located in Campbellton, right behind Muscles and Moore Pottery.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thanks to all of you for being here today. Now, the forest industry, obviously, huge topic. So I'd like to maybe just look at what you guys see as what's going to be happening in the forest industry in the next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years. And I think we wanted to talk a bit about the introduction of certain technologies into the sector, and obviously we're going to talk about where the First Nations come into forest industry. So, Domenico, if we can maybe just start with you, what are the trends you see happening with the forest industry right now?
Well, globally, first of all, I think it's a great time to be in forestry because more and more customers, builders, fuel producers realize the benefits and the carbon friendliness of forestry. With that, you're going to see a lot more substitution for concrete and steel that we're used to in our built-up environment being sourced from forests. And as well as we evolve, we're going to see more and more fuels made of forests and forest-derived products. It's an exciting time, and as we improve how we integrate our business with communities and First Nations are more involved, geomatics, all that technology, it's an exciting time to be in the industry or to join the industry.
Okay. And can you give us a sense of what sort of growth you've seen or you're projecting for the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, demand is strong right now for forest products across the globe. The types of products we grow in Canada, the types of products that they grow in the tropics, it's all important. We see as population increases and some of those substitutions that I mentioned happening, demand could continue to increase 1 or 2% a year if all those other things stay stable. So it's a steady business, and we think as we continue to grow more on the same piece of ground, as we improve our management practices, it's all positive.
Okay. You've mentioned 1 or 2% a year is sustainable growth here, and I'd like to ask you, what does that look like for jobs in our sector?
As we evolve, as we always have in our 105 years of history, the human factor in forestry is important. It's going to continue to be important, and jobs will continue to shift from on the ground to managing things around drones and the types of remote sensing technologies So we'll have a shift in the workforce, but we will still need high quality operators, high quality foresters, engineers, accountants, all of those things that we have today, with that focus on really understanding our forests. In the past, there were general estimates and statistical averages about how to manage forests. And I'm looking forward to hearing how Chris will tell us how we can continue to get down to the individual tree level and really manage our customers' demands with what we're growing. It's a real efficiency opportunity in the business.
Oh, that's terrific. Domenico, you're doing my job for me here with the transition here, Chris.
Okay.
No, that's terrific. Hey,
No, like,
I got no problem.
Like Domenico was saying, you know, it's as growth continues in the industry, I mean, finding a labor force is important, and we're realizing that there is a real shortage. Seeing that niche and the type of level as far as environmental and production goes, we've developed a proprietary software to help count the number of trees, give them the number of area, work with different roads, developing different lots, as well as giving them the ability to do environmental monitoring basically in real time is what our project is working for now. We're also introducing this year a chemical sensor from the air. It's not brand new technology, but nobody's put it in the air before. So our eventual end goal is to eventually create species detection.
Wow.
So we could fly 100 acres, 200 acres, and tell you how many trees, how big the canopies are, and what types of trees they are. And that is something we've been working on the last 5 years here, and we're one step closer. It's actually going into testing this year. So we're trying to give them as many tools in the forestry industry as they can, from the guy on the ground to be able to pick a tree with a GPS location to know how tall it is, to the shops back in the offices who know how many trees they have to cut, where to put the roads in, where are areas of concern, where the free to grow is. And that's all done automated through our software. And it was a need because there's such a shortage. You know, we deal with a lot of forest cruisers.
Sure.
And a lot of them are starting to use drones now. And we can even take that information and plug it into our system as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be our collection. Mm-hmm. So we've designed our software to be as interactive and user-friendly as a guy on the ground or a guy in the office. So you don't necessarily have to have a GIS background.
Okay. This might be an obvious question. So how does that fit in with planning for production, where you're going to cut and how much you're going to cut and all of that?
Well, for us, it's a pretty valuable tool. Any of those technological advantages where you don't have people on the ground and tough terrain and things like that, getting out of helicopters when they're running full throttle. If you can do a look in the office before you go, it saves considerable time and money, and you can put people in the right places, you know, all the time. And then just as far as timber supply goes, it's a very valuable tool for timber supply, because provincially timber supply's got a problem with the outbreak of the pine beetle and now the spruce beetle in the north around Prince George area. So you can do a lot of timber supply analysis with the software that's being developed, and it helps it considerably looking forward for inventories and where you're at. And even on the coast, we use a lot of it. And no beetles on the coast, but certainly timber supply is still a problem just because of different decisions, and you know, everybody wants to use the land and that type of thing. So you know, all this technological stuff really helps that a lot.
I mentioned the distribution of tree species along different terrain would factor in here. How does that help you figure out? You're talking about sensing to be able to determine exactly what kinds of trees we're looking at.
Exactly.
So how does that, again, going back to the planning idea, how does that work in then to planning and developing?
Sure, it's a big part of our planning and development process. We also use a technology known as LiDAR to complement and supplement some of the work that Chris is talking about. We have private land tenures and we have public land tenures. And to Corby's point, in both cases, there's room for improvement in improving those inventories and really understanding how you can combine the planning aspect with the timber and the customers. So if we know that that's tough terrain, we know the timber type, we know what the customers want, we can put a pretty good conceptual together before we go in the field, which also to Corby's point improves safety, opportunities by minimizing exposure for people on the ground in tough terrain, and making sure we actually build roads in the precisely best spot. We've always tried in the industry for centuries and decades, and we get it very well already, but there's just that opportunity to make it that much better with the technology.
And as far as the safety goes, we've developed the software actually for the pilot so that it's a single pilot operation. You don't need multiple pilots, there isn't multiple screens. Essentially one simple screen, and it's literally like playing a video game. Everything is set up for the pilot to read easily. It turns on autonomously, it turns off autonomously, and the information is sent via a cell phone link. So we're working on live data link now. So originally designed for oil and gas, but there's so many more applications for it now where you can get that information to you as quick as possible. And it's more so giving them a full circle of the entire area that they're looking at. So you know, we've worked with LiDAR, we've processed LiDAR information and given it more layers so that they get a complete picture of the area. So, you know, we're happy to work in the industry, is just getting recommendations, getting feedback. You know, guys on the ground, we want them staying safe, we want them going home at the end of the day, and same for our pilots and our staff. You know, it's paramount these days, so it's important to keep everybody safe.
And you guys are flying in the planning stages. You're not out in the area when there's active logging going on. Is that correct? Or are you?
It depends on the particular project. We'll go out and do a pre-assessment typically, get a layout, a plan, and then we'll refly it usually 2 or 3 times depending on the contract at different stages. So it's monitored. Is there anything changed? Is there anything shifted? You know, is there unexpected issues arising, floods or erosion, that kind of happening that wasn't understood or wasn't maybe thought of at the beginning. So.
Yep.
And again, it just adds piles to the information to give them a broad picture of what's going on the ground.
Okay. Okay.
I think another side effect too, just to pick up on what Domenico was saying, is you got to refer everything to First Nations in their territory when you do forestry harvesting and stuff like that. And what we found out with the LiDAR is it picks up cultural sites like old house pits and grease trails and things like that. So it's been a real valuable tool, and most of the licensees will share that information with the First Nation, or in some cases with our clients, they've actually helped pay for the product for their forest licenses. But certainly it really cuts down on some of the, if you know where there's an existing cultural site, you can go and sort of zone in it with a LiDAR and have a look at it. And things that you wouldn't normally see with the naked eye actually show up with the laser imaging. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. It's kind of like taking an X-ray machine and flying it over.
Yeah.
There are no X-rays involved. But
no.
It's taking light and bouncing it back and seeing what you can get down to the 5-centimeter resolution in terms of topography, and it can go below surface and give you some feeds in terms of what's actually buried. You couldn't even see on the ground with your naked eye. Add that with the timber typing opportunity. It's quite powerful.
Yeah.
And you know, it just points to the fact that forestry is a complex industry, and this is helping with that, because, you know, by and large in the past it was all on the ground with your feet looking for stuff, and this is really helping take away some of the unknowns that are out there.
Oh, that's great. And that leads back into, of course, to safety. Safety technology. Domenico, I think you were telling me earlier about some other technologies that are in the works here, or perhaps on the ground already.
Well, safety is a big driver of our technological projects at Timber West. We have an office here in Campbell River. About 3 years ago, we started a program with a local company called TMR Industries. After we were analyzing a fairly old piece of technology known as a grapple yarder. Some of your viewers will know about it, but if you think of a clothesline on an excavator on a road, and you can send out an old-fashioned giant claw to pick up trees that have been felled, and then you can pull those trees to the road. Well, that grapple over the last 50 years since it's been used has been guided, once it's a few hundred meters away from the machine, by another worker on the ground, just giving voice cues back and forth to the operator, who's got a lot of things going on already. And on foggy days, it wasn't even very useful at all. So we said, well, why don't we put a camera on this grapple, put a little video monitor in the cab with the operator, and TMAR was able and interested to help us try this out. So we were there to help them with the pilot project. We put in an order for 8 cameras. We've been testing it with them ever since, and they've got it to a bomb-proof stage now, and it's all theirs, and they're selling it to other companies in British Columbia and also around the world, reducing delays in the process and also making it much safer for people on the ground in those types of forest operations. So we're very proud of it, and we're very proud of TMAR for carrying it on.
Excellent. You said bomb-proof. Were you talking about its functionality or about the durability or?
Logger-proof.
There's nothing.
Is anything logger-proof?
No higher ranking than logger-proof. Let me tell you. So yep, this 800-pound grapple is bashing its way over some logs when it's trying to catch them, and that camera has to survive. And we're into the upper 90s for uptime now with that camera, and we expect to get better. And who knows, maybe NASA needs something like that too. But it started here at Campbell River, folks.
Logging and NASA.
No, it's amazing the amount of technology that's actually in this town, considering it, it's a logging town, fishing town, mining town, that kind of thing. But the advances in technology is quite remarkable for a very small North Island town kind of thing. And I don't think we quite get the recognition as to what's going on here, but we're innovating with big businesses and with end goals, and it's making a difference in the industry as a whole. Safer, faster, and a lot more efficient.
Yeah, Campbell River really is the hub of the coastal forest industry in BC, and these are just some of the dozens of examples in the last 5 years where there's been significant innovation.
Yeah, it used to be you had waterproof paper and a pencil when you're out taking notes. Now it's all iPads. And they're actually pretty bulletproof as well, so it's made a huge change in what you can do and where, mapping and stuff like that. You just download a file when you get back to the office and it's done already. So it's...
How many times we had to walk around in circles in the forest trying to figure out exactly where we were. It's pretty rare now.
Yeah, everything's geo-referenced now. So if you see some kind of a feature out there, a stream or something like that, you can take a picture of it. It's instantly geo-referenced and goes into the GIS system when you get back. Wow. And there's actually, you can touch the screen, there's a picture of it there. So it's all pretty cool when I look in the 50 years I've been in the industry and, to what it is now from where we started. It's incredible.
And we use the same with LiDAR and that. Ground control points or monuments. So these are known, geo-referenced, and they're usually surveyed by a professional certified surveyor. And we're able to take that data and underlay it underneath an ortho image. So now we'll have the same 5-centimeter accuracy. Some of the projects we've done, you can identify a gas cap in the middle of a field. We've got some high resolution sub-centimeter per pixel imagery kind of thing. Like you can zoom right in and see the word steel on the guy's chainsaw on the back of his truck kind of thing. And it's just, we all know Google Earth, and you zoom in and everything kind of gets cloudy. Yeah. Ours, you can basically, with high resolution stereoscopic, which is basically overlapping your images, you can zoom right into an unbelievable level and get the amount of detail for foliage, for runoff, that kind of thing.
And I want to dive a bit more into the Aboriginal aspect of forestry. But before we go there, I just want one more little bit here. You were just talking a minute ago about the imagery, and so when you submit, when you do a job for a client and you submit them the data, the format that's being received in, I'm sure there's lots of formats it's being received in. But just to give maybe our viewers a sense of what it is that people are looking at.
So our system, what we realized is there was a big stumbling block between accessing that data quickly and getting it to their GIS department so that they can overlay and use their software. So we developed a number of different platforms where, depending on what you're using in your office, that's the format you'll receive. So it's an instant download. But further to that, we've created an online portal where the information and the imagery itself, with a handful of very simple GIS tools, measuring tools, and area calculations, that kind of thing, are used. So it's instant, and you can look at it on your phone, on your computer, and you can have that with you at all times. As long as you have Wi-Fi, you can access that data quickly and easily, which is great for presentations, that kind of thing. And then when your GIS department is done developing their end of it and adding it, then it can be re-uploaded to our website again. So you get your data quickly. Plus we use a WMTS or web map tile service. Okay. So basically it's stored on our side so that it can be uploaded very quickly on the other end. And then it's kept secure, stored. If anything happens to your data on your side, it's always backed up on our side. And this is very valuable information. So it's secured, and it's encrypted. So it's very important and very paramount for us to keep this type of data secure.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be very important to your clients. I want to move on to the other topic, but you're talking about accessing the information. So if I understand from a layman's perspective, your clients can sort of have access at all times to, hey, this area over here, there's this much wood there that we can harvest. Is that sort of the basic idea?
Exactly. So here's a map of the area. Yeah. Here's how big it is. Here's the GPS locations, and here's the number of trees. And if you want to have trees over 20 feet, trees over 20 feet, push the button. Trees over 20 feet, or whatever the parameter of the project is.
That's terrific. Yeah. So we've been talking about the forest industry generally, and I know Corby, your business in particular, but Domenico, Timber West as well. You guys are heavily involved with First Nations, and where we're talking about going forward here. How do you see the forest industry working with and benefiting First Nations moving forward?
Well, our client base is 100% First Nations. That's sort of our shtick in the industry. And so we've got about 25 bands that we work with across the province, over a couple hundred licenses probably. And there's a real intimate relationship developing here between the big companies and like Timber West and other companies with First Nations. And a lot of different things, right from the First Nations selling their timber to a company or to a sawmill the company owns, so fiber supply agreements, right through to joint venture partnerships and project management, things like that, and lots of business-to-business relationships with the larger licensees. So it's actually evolved from in 2003 when Bill 28 gave timber to First Nations. It's evolved into quite a healthy business relationship across the province with First Nations and larger companies. So it's a new day, and I think going forward with the Silkwoten decision and different decisions that have been made, that points to more involvement of First Nations in industry. The problem is going to be tenure. There's a lot of tenure that's out there, but tenure is very valuable. It's gone from less than $20 a cubic meter upwards of $200 a cubic meter for tenure nowadays. And I think the strong markets are going to make that even more valuable. So it's just trying to find the timber for the First Nations. And so what we've done to sort of alleviate some of that is the nation might have a license for 50,000 cubic meters. We get involved with somebody like Timber West where they maybe put some volume into the pot too. And that turns into a business relationship where there's a profit share, or maybe not sometimes, depending on the relationship, where the First Nation gets a benefit back from that relationship, as does the company, in a better, broader relationship, I think. And I'm sure you can speak to it from your side.
Certainly, and Corby's company's been a leader in bringing First Nations back into the forest economy. We're here on unceded territory. They have a history of forestry, and Timber West has always had First Nations partnerships of various forms. Certainly over the last 20 years, these have matured and evolved to very intricate and integral parts of our business. Upwards of 15% of our business involves working with First Nations, either selling or trading or purchasing logs or helping them plan their forestry operations, like Corby was speaking to. What Timber West has done recently is achieved certification through the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. It's called the Progressive Aboriginal Relations Certification. So we have goals for leadership and employment, business investment, and community interactions. So we're increasingly working to have First Nations as part of our payroll, or our contractors' payroll, and then really getting relationships with the 36 First Nations we operate in and around to share their knowledge of the forest and make sure we add that and incorporate that and their wishes into how we manage those forests. So type of information management systems that Chris would have can also help with the First Nations cultural objectives and desires. So it's really great. I think as their treaties begin to increasingly settle, you'll see more First Nations with forestry tenure. And it's companies like Capacity and Timber West that can help bring those timbers to market, help reforest, help keep it a sustainable and really good resource all around.
Corby, you were talking, and Domenico, you've just referenced tenure and First Nations actually getting the wood. And you mentioned earlier at the start of the show that your company started to get involved with treaty negotiations. Does that play a part in securing access to?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one new type of agreement because the treaty process tends to grind on for years and years. So you've got BC and you got the federal government involved in a treaty. The province recently came out with a new type of agreement called a foundation agreement, which is sort of an immediate benefit agreement, money up front through the Sustainable Forestry Initiative to finance different things like forestry facilities and that sort of thing. And that type of agreement is happening in 5 different places with some bigger bands in the province. And so that's leading, part of that whole discussion is tenure. And we're working on one up in the Prince George area right now where there'll be some forestry tenure given to them in the form of private land, and then that will turn into Aboriginal title land down the road, and it'll provide some tenure for them. And generally the agreement is that if the tenure comes from a licensee, then when you get that tenure, you maybe sell those logs back to that licensee as a business arrangement or a thank you for working with the First Nation. So it's quite a different landscape, I think, from the original treaty process and these new agreements. That being said, the feds do have to get involved sooner or later because fish is part of every treaty. So the federal government controls the fisheries.
Yes, and in planning planning forestry, of course, you have to take into account fish-bearing streams, watersheds.
Oh, absolutely.
And so. I guess that brings us full circle right back into the.
Yeah, we actually did a recent fish count survey here at Campbell River, and we were able to video fish spawning at the time, and we had counted over 18,000 fish in less than 30 seconds with our software, and we ran at about a 95% accuracy rate, according to went over the ladder. So, again, things like this and where the water is running to, where it naturally collects. You know, again, we're able to paint a bigger picture and provide just more information.
And I guess that's gonna play in to making the forest industry more efficient, and we've already talked about safer, and helping to grow it for for First Nations and for all the other forestry companies in the area. Gentlemen, we are out of time. I would like to thank all of you for coming out today. Chris, Domenico, Corby, really appreciate your time. This has been a terrific discussion. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.